Rome had grown quiet after weeks of headlines, but the calm was only an illusion. Behind the scenes, something much bigger was happening, something no one saw coming. While fans still debated his relationship with Sara, Yaman had taken a flight out of Italy, quietly, discreetly, and without a single trace on social media. The destination? Istanbul. At first, no one knew why he had gone. His team refused to comment, and even Sara's usual cryptic posts had stopped. But 2 days later, Turkish gossip pages began whispering about an unexpected sighting. Yaman, they said, had been seen near Demet Özdemir's family home on the outskirts of the city. The rumor spread like wildfire. Yaman visits Demet's family in secret, one headline read. Others claimed it wasn't just a friendly visit, it was emotional, quiet, and deeply personal. One neighbor described what they saw. He arrived in a black car with tinted windows, late at night. He looked serious, not like a celebrity. More like a man with something important to say. Within hours, Turkish TV channels began analyzing every detail. Why now? Why Demet's family, and not Demet herself? Some insiders claimed that the visit had been planned for weeks. According to one report, Ken had reached out privately to Demet's mother through a mutual friend. His reason, as one source put it, was to make peace, not for publicity, but for closure. It wasn't the first time these two worlds had crossed. Years earlier, Demet's family had quietly supported their relationship, but after their breakup, all communication had stopped. For Ken to visit them again now, especially while still linked to Sara, raised more questions than answers. The next morning, new photos surfaced. Not clear enough to confirm everything, but enough to ignite speculation. Yaman, wearing a simple black jacket, standing outside a familiar-looking house. A woman who resembled Demet's mother greeting him at the door. Another blurred figure behind the window. Fans went into a frenzy. Some were convinced it was real, others believed it was an old photo being recycled. But one detail changed everything. The car parked outside was the same model Ken had been photographed in just a week earlier in Rome. The plate partially matched. And if that wasn't enough, a Turkish journalist added fuel to the fire by posting, "I can confirm he was there." It was not a business trip. It was emotional. Back in Rome, Sara woke up to the storm. Her phone was flooded with tags, mentions, and screenshots. For hours, she stayed silent, until she posted a simple but cutting message on her Instagram story: "Loyalty isn't something you show when people are watching." The internet exploded. Was she confirming the rumor? Was she hurt? Fans began splitting into camps, some defending Ken, others accusing him of betrayal. By the end of the day, the hashtag #CanAndDemet was trending again, after almost 2 years of silence. And somewhere in Istanbul, behind the walls of that quiet home, a conversation had happened that no one, not even the closest friends, could explain. Because sometimes, the hardest truths don't come from interviews or cameras. They come from the moments no one was supposed to see. By the next morning, the headlines were everywhere, not just in Turkey, but across Europe. Yaman secretly visits Demet's family, Sara furious in Rome, screamed one Italian tabloid. The photos had gone viral, and while the world tried to piece the story together, the people at the center of it were already living the consequences. In Istanbul, Demet Özdemir was filming when her phone began buzzing nonstop. Her assistant handed it to her hesitantly. One glance at the screen, and her expression changed completely. The message wasn't from a journalist or a friend. It was from her mother. "He came by," it said. "He looked different. Calmer. We talked for a while." Demet froze. It had been years since her mother even mentioned his name. Her hands trembled as she scrolled to the next message. He didn't talk about the past. He just wanted to say that he was sorry, for everything. For a long time, Demet said nothing. The people around her noticed she wasn't herself that day. During filming, her usually bright energy was replaced by a quiet, reflective look. Even her co-stars whispered among themselves, something was off. Meanwhile, in Rome, Sara Blooma's silence was breaking. According to Italian gossip outlets, she had called off all her scheduled brand events and cancelled a photo shoot. Her friends claimed she wasn't answering calls. Then, that afternoon, she posted a story that sent shockwaves through social media. A photo of a half-packed suitcase, with the caption, "There's a limit to patience." The message was clear. Later that same day, she was spotted entering a cafe in Rome, visibly upset, talking on the phone. One witness told La Repubblica she was crying. She said something like, "He knew what this would do to me." By evening, Turkish TV reporters claimed they had confirmed what everyone feared: Sara had given Can an ultimatum. "Either you make your intentions clear about Demet, or I'm done." Insiders described her as heartbroken but determined. She wasn't angry about the visit itself, she was angry about the secrecy. At the same time, new details emerged about Can's night in Istanbul. A family acquaintance leaked a few words from that conversation. He didn't talk much about Demet. He only said he needed peace. That he wanted her family to know he held no resentment. But rumors swirled that something more personal was said. Something that explained his sudden decision to go there. According to one unconfirmed report, Can had received a letter, not from Demet, but from her mother. A message written months earlier, never meant for the press. It allegedly read, "You both were good people who met at the wrong time. Maybe one day you'll find kindness in remembering, not regret." And that, some sources said, was why he went. Back in Rome, Can still hadn't spoken publicly. He avoided events, ignored photographers, and was seen leaving his apartment only late at night. His usual confident posture seemed replaced by something quieter, a kind of reflection that cameras couldn't fully capture. Sara, on the other hand, was making her next move. Late that night, she unfollowed him on Instagram, then refollowed him 2 hours later. Fans noticed instantly. It wasn't about social media, it was about power. It was a silent warning, one that said, "You're running out of chances." By the end of the week, the internet had decided there were only two possible outcomes: either Can and Demet were finding peace again, or Sara was about to walk away for good. But what no one knew was that the story was far from over, because the next move wouldn't come from any of them, it would come from someone unexpected. The story had already taken on a life of its own. What began as a single secret visit had now spiraled into an emotional storm across two countries. But while the media speculated about scandal and betrayal, those who truly knew Yaman could see something deeper. He wasn't angry, or defensive. He looked lost. 3 days after the Istanbul visit, Demet Özdemir was photographed leaving her set early. The cameras caught her in a long beige coat, sunglasses hiding her eyes. But even through the still images, something was clear. She had been crying. That evening, a close friend of hers reportedly told the Turkish magazine Posta she didn't expect him to go there. It brought back a lot of emotions she had buried for years. She said she wasn't angry, just confused. Why now? Why her family? That question echoed across social media. Fans of both stars flooded comment sections with theories: he still loves her. He needed closure. Maybe he wanted forgiveness before starting a new chapter. But for Demet, forgiveness wasn't something she could give through a headline. That same night, she posted a quote on her Instagram story: "Sometimes peace feels like distance." No tags. No names. Just words that carried too much weight to be random. Meanwhile, in Rome, Sara Blooma's patience had officially run out. According to sources close to her, she had demanded a private conversation with Can the moment he returned. They met at his apartment, no cameras, no managers. Neighbors later said they heard voices, raised but not shouting. It wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. "I can't love someone who's still tied to the past," she reportedly told him. "You went to her family. What does that say about us?" Can didn't deny it. He didn't try to justify. He simply said, "You don't understand, it wasn't about love. It was about peace. But Sara wasn't convinced. She stood there, quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Peace doesn't hurt the person you're with." And with that, she walked out. By morning, she was gone, and so was her suitcase. The Italian press immediately picked up the story. Sara Bluma leaves Yaman after ultimatum. The romance ends in silence. Yet, those close to Can said that he didn't chase after her. He didn't post, didn't explain, didn't fight back. For days, he stayed alone, turning down interviews, canceling appearances. One friend described him as exhausted, emotionally and mentally. He said he wanted to disappear for a while. He wasn't running away from the rumors, he was running from himself. At the same time, fans noticed that Demet had started following one of his close friends again, a quiet digital gesture that spoke louder than any tabloid story. For the public, this was fuel for another theory: Demet is reaching out. But insiders said the truth was different. She wasn't reaching out to rekindle anything. She simply wanted to understand why he had done what he did. And somewhere between the lines of guilt, regret, and unspoken affection, Yaman found himself trapped between two worlds, one that still held his heart, and one that was slipping away. For the first time in his career, he didn't know which part of his story the world would see next: the man seeking forgiveness, or the one losing everything in the process. For the first time in weeks, Yaman completely vanished from public view. No interviews. No events. No airport sightings. It was as if he had disappeared from Rome itself. The tabloids called it his escape, but those who truly understood him knew it wasn't that simple. He wasn't running away from the media, he was running from noise, from emotion, from the version of himself the world thought it knew. Sara Bluma's departure had left a silence heavier than anger. Her apartment in Rome was empty, her phone off, her last story deleted. It was as if she wanted to erase her name from his narrative entirely. For the first few days, Can tried to distract himself with work, training, reading, but nothing helped. Every time he looked at his phone, his thumb hovered over her name, yet he never pressed call. Then, one morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at his apartment, no return address, no signature. Just his name, written in delicate handwriting. He opened it slowly, recognizing the style immediately. It was from Demet's mother. "You did the right thing," it began. "Not every visit has to end in reconciliation. Sometimes showing up is enough. I hope you find peace in knowing that forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken." Can read it twice, then folded it neatly. That one line, "showing up is enough," stayed with him all day. It was what he had tried to explain to Sara, but she couldn't see it. And maybe, he thought, she wasn't supposed to. That same evening, a Turkish TV program aired unseen footage, a short video of Can walking through a quiet Istanbul street, wearing a black hoodie, head down, hands in pockets. It wasn't scandalous, but it reignited the storm. The narration said, after visiting Demet's family, Can Yaman appears alone, reflective, perhaps regretful. The footage was everywhere within hours. Fans wrote essays about his body language, his silence, his sadness. Every gesture was analyzed like a scene from a movie. And then, unexpectedly, Demet herself reacted. Not with words, but with something more powerful. She liked a fan's comment under that video that read, "When someone walks away from fame to protect their heart, that's when you know it's real." The internet lost its mind. Was it coincidence? A signal? Forgiveness? Meanwhile, Ken was receiving messages from journalists offering him the chance to tell his side. For days, he refused. But the constant speculation, the twisting of motives, and the hurt on both sides began to weigh on him. Then, one night, as he looked out over the Tiber River from his balcony, he said softly to himself, "If I don't speak, they'll keep writing the wrong story." That was the moment he made his decision. He called his manager and said, "Arrange an interview." But not a dramatic one, something simple, honest. The next day, Italian entertainment channels broke the news: Can Yaman to speak publicly for the first time since the scandal. Sarah's friends reportedly reached out to her immediately, warning her that he might defend his actions. Her answer was cold but clear: he can say whatever he wants. I've already heard his silence. As for Demet, she said nothing, but sources claimed she asked her family not to discuss him anymore. What needed to be said was said, her mother told a reporter gently. By now, the world had turned their heartbreak into entertainment. But for Can, this interview wasn't about headlines anymore. It was about reclaiming the one thing he had lost in all the noise, his truth. And when he finally walked into that studio a week later, the cameras caught something the gossip columns never could: not guilt. Not pride. Just a man who had finally decided to stop hiding from his own story. The studio was silent except for the soft hum of lights and cameras preparing to roll. The air was thick, the kind of silence that comes right before something real. When Yaman finally walked in, dressed simply in black, there was no red carpet, no glamour, no performance. Just him. The host, an experienced journalist known for her empathy, welcomed him quietly. Can, it's been weeks since we last saw you. People have said so many things. Tonight, you have the chance to speak your truth. Where do we begin? Can looked down for a second, then lifted his gaze. His voice was calm, but tired, the voice of someone who had finally stopped running. Let's begin with what's real, he said softly. Because lately, I think people forgot that I'm not a story, I'm a person. The host nodded gently, giving him space. The visit to Istanbul. Demet's family. Why did you go? He hesitated, then exhaled deeply. Because there were things left unsaid. Not with anger, not with regret, just unfinished words. I didn't go there to reopen anything. I went because I needed peace, and because I owed respect to people who were once part of my life. The audience was quiet. The world had waited weeks for this, and instead of scandal, they were hearing vulnerability. People thought it was about love, he continued, his eyes fixed on the table. But sometimes love doesn't come back. It just changes form. I went there because forgiveness is something you don't always ask for out loud. Sometimes you just show up and say nothing. The host smiled faintly. And Sara? Kim paused again, his jaw tightening slightly. Sara didn't deserve pain. She didn't deserve confusion. But I can't change how people feel when they see honesty as betrayal. I didn't hide anything to hurt her, I just didn't explain enough to protect her. That was my mistake. He looked down, his eyes heavy. When you try to make peace with your past, you risk losing your present. And I did. The host leaned forward. Do you regret it? He thought for a moment before shaking his head slowly. No. Because pretending would have been worse. I'd rather be misunderstood for being honest than loved for being fake. There was a long pause. The interviewer let the silence breathe, the kind of silence that carries truth. Demet and her family? She asked gently. Ken smiled faintly, almost nostalgically. They'll always have my respect. We shared a story that the world watched, but only we really lived. And that's enough. The interviewer nodded again. You know people will still talk, right? They'll still speculate, twist your words. Ken smiled, this time with calm acceptance. Let them. People need stories to believe in. But I'm done living for what they write. I just want peace, real peace. At that moment, the camera zoomed in slightly. His eyes glistened, not from pain, but from clarity. It wasn't the image of a man defending himself, it was someone setting himself free. When the interview aired that night, the internet exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Yaman speaks, hashtag the truth, and hashtag he chose peace filled Twitter timelines across Italy and Turkey. Fans translated every word, every pause. Clips went viral. Even Sara Bluma posted a single story a few hours later, a black screen with white text that read, "Sometimes closure sounds like truth." And from Istanbul, Demet Özdemir shared a quiet post of her own, a photo of the sea at sunset with the caption, "Some memories don't hurt anymore. They just exist." Neither mentioned his name. They didn't have to. The timing said everything. By the next morning, major European newspapers carried variations of the same headline: "He chose truth over love, Can Yaman breaks his silence." But what the world didn't see was the moment after the camera stopped rolling. When the lights dimmed and the crew began packing up, Ken sat there for a while, alone, silent, breathing. The journalist walked over and whispered, "You know this will change everything, right?" He smiled faintly. It already did. As he walked out into the cool night air of Rome, the city that had witnessed so many of his storms, something in him felt lighter. Not because the world finally understood, but because he no longer needed it to. He looked up at the sky, whispered quietly to himself, "I kept my promise. I told the truth." And for the first time in a long time, there was no guilt, no noise, no weight, just silence. The kind of silence that feels like freedom,